How did you go about deciding, with all of your documents and memorabilia and stuff after 2006, to donate or gift them here to the Center for Sacramento History versus, say, somewhere else?
Somebody asked. Although I guess the truth of it is the Rock and Roll Museum, but they didn't ask first. I think is really what happened. They as I told you a little earlier when we were chatting
Yeah.
about that the people in the artist community and the label community sort of looked down their noses at retailers, and I mean they were a necessary evil and all that. So when they established the Rock and Roll Museum, they were more into the artist and the music, which is totally justifiable. Makes all kinds of sense. So the memorabilia about retailers didn't, in the beginning, didn't mean much to them. I think it does sort of now. In other words, they realize that that was we were part of the family. The we meaning not just Tower, but the number of other chains of record stores that went through those same years and developed the retail business in the country.
Jim Urey, does that name ring a bell?
Indeed.
President, CEO of Universal Music. Just want to read a quote from him and get your reaction to it.
He said something nice?
He did. He said that Tower Records is the best brand that has ever been or probably ever will be established in music retailing. What do you think about that?
Well, I take his daughter to lunch a lot. I mean,
okay. Well, what made it what made it the greatest brand ever in the minds of not just him but many? What was that thing that made it so great?
I think it was the attitude. I could take a little. I can't take the credit necessarily myself, but I mean we could take the credit for the fact that our attitude was localized throughout the world. In other words, we did not try to, at least in the beginning, and for most of the years of its operation, try to control it from one place, to be a chain. What we wanted to accomplish in the management of the stores was to have the stores be a big family of mom and pop record stores, you could almost say it that way, but principally that they had the individual stores had a tremendous amount of local management control. And the people in the stores were the ones that literally created the ideas that made the thing go. In other words, it wasn't a couple of brainy guys in Sacramento, that were doing it. It was this hundreds and hundreds of people out in the field that were running the stores, not just the managers either. I mean, the clerks and so on who you tell them, go take care of that, and then they come up with a new way of doing it, and that was fine. And they understood, when you think about the market, the retail market, they understood it much better being there and seeing it, just like any independent retailer of anything understands their market. They see it every day with their eyes. So they understood it thoroughly. So I think that was the big difference. It was horizontal management as opposed to vertical management.
Talk a little bit about the San Francisco and LA stores. They seem to really set the company on a path that really led it all around the country and then around the world.
Well, I get your attention when they open up and they become a big success the day they open. I mean, that gives you a hint that maybe the people like you, or if they don't like you, at least they like the music. So I mean, and that was the important thing. So we learned a great deal when we opened San Francisco. And it's funny, I was just down there yesterday. There's finally, after all these years, there's going to be a Walgreens store in our San Francisco building. They remodeled the whole building so it looks differently. And I was thinking, well, we started a drugstore. Now one of our buildings is becoming a drugstore again.
Take your sort of founder, CEO hat off and just talk as a Sacramentan. How significant is Tower Records to the history of Sacramento in the last half of the 20th century?
Gosh, I don't know. That's more for somebody else to say than me. I can say we had a lot of fun, and it was easy to do it here. It was this is a very comfortable place to operate from. I wonder, and I suspect that having met other businessmen and people that have spread out from here, I think they think the same way. It's an easy place to live. It's an easy commute. The weather's generally okay. You know, we can communicate with anywhere and quick. We can get things to and from anywhere.
Did anybody ever convince you or try to convince you to move, say,
Not
to
really.
LA or New York?
No, not really. They didn't want me anywhere near them because, after all, the industry was in New York or in Los Angeles. No, we never talked about it. They didn't care. It's kind of I came to a conclusion along the way that one of the things that was wrong with the record industry late in the whole picture was that decisions on what was happening in stores was happening in small towns. Albany, New York, for a big chain, Minneapolis, Amarillo, Texas, and Sacramento. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, there's something wrong with that. I mean, if people in those cities, and that's when we had to take on some new management, the new managements decided to go centrally. They wanted to run everything centrally, and I was thinking to myself, now I'm sure that people in those cities that I just named really don't have a really good view of the world, certainly the music and cultural world, than somebody in New York.
Right.
Yes.
And when you traveled around the country and around the world, and the subject of your hometown would come up, people would ask you where you're from, just like they would anybody. What do they ask you about
Nobody-
Sacramento, and what do you tell them?
Nobody asked.
Nobody? Okay.
Nobody asked. Nobody cared. I don't think so.
I asked you how
It
important.
all seemed so natural, don't you see?
Yeah.
People we hung out with, at least, there wasn't anything. There wasn't any desire of anybody to have us move any place.
Talk about this rather amazing fundraising drive here that's about to kick off with regard to the Tower Records collection at the Center for Sacramento History, sort of an all-out effort to raise money to preserve and process and protect the Tower Records collection and ultimately showcase it to people who have a connection to Tower all over the world.
Well, I'm delighted that you, the people here at the history. What's the technical name of this? Center for Sacramento History. Okay, got that straight. And that anybody, for that matter, cares enough about it to preserve it. I think it's a good thing. The most important thing is we really and truly did touch the lives of millions of people all over the world. And it felt good for people. I've been told this anyhow. I didn't realize it because so many people started telling me, and I said, wow, maybe it's true. But there was so many people would go from Sacramento or Los Angeles to London and see our store there, or to Tokyo or Singapore, or, even Jerusalem, believe it or not. And then they felt like they were a little bit at home, which was pretty nice to hear. But the important thing is that, and I sort of knew this, but I wasn't paying that much attention to it myself because we were just doing our job. And but people cared about what we had because the music itself, the item that we were selling, the music, the movies, the books, the whole shebang that we were selling were the things that were important to their lives. Whether you're a musician or a listener or a collector or whatever, the music was the key that it all circulated around.
You didn't realize it while you were doing it, the impact that you had. But now that you had some time to reflect and so forth, how important is Tower Records to the history of the music business and to the entertainment business as a whole?
Well, I think we represent the visibility of the music business as it developed in the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, up to the beginning, up to now in a way. It's changed so dramatically in the last 10 years since the advent of the internet and so on. But we were certainly integral to that. And since we were so broad, we touched all these different kinds of audiences. And this set us apart from most other record stores or chains of record stores, was the idea that we were very seriously interested in classical music, for instance, in country music, in Americana, in jazz, absolutely, and so on and so on. It was those, and not to mention pop, and love music, all the stuff. So it's that connection. First of all, I'm pleased to know about it. All through the years, we didn't think about that. All we did was, sell. Where'd you get that film?
Well, I was gonna play that
amazing.
for you.
Did you see that film?
Yeah, we watched
That looks like one
I
of
was gonna
L.A.'s
get-
store. Where'd you
it.
get
It was
it?
1971.
It was 1971, and we were trying to nail down the store, and we think it's the San Francisco.
It's L.A. or San Francisco. Let me see it again. If you can turn that light off.
No,
That
here we got.
player doesn't. I don't recognize the picture.
Any of that look familiar?
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of speaks to how you just fill up the store and stack it up and open the
Stack 'em
doors,
high.
huh?
That has to be Los Angeles.
Uh-huh.
It's got to be Los Angeles or San Francisco, and I'm trying to figure out. It's in the LP days, 71.
Uh-huh.
I think it's San Francisco. It's just look at all the windows on the right.
It might be San Francisco.
So when you-
Imagine the way we could buy records that way, that we could buy stacked stuff, and then when it was busy, the pile would just go down.
So when you see footage like this, it's 40-some years old. I mean, what do
This
you
is
think
great.
of?
I didn't know any of that existed. I mean, I didn't know any of that film existed.
I mean, it's got to bring back some
There must
memories.
be a
and I think-
setup. They must be setting up the store.
Yeah, yeah.
But if it's 71, I'm thinking, I wish there was something I could key in on here. Let's see.
There's at some point.
$1.77.
At some point, there's a shot
$2.77.
outside of a John Lennon billboard outside.
Let's see what the outside looks like. I
But
can
they
tell
didn't.
that.
The person who did this didn't get a shot of the front. Didn't get a shot of the front of the store. So that's why there's a little bit of a challenge trying to identify it. But it's great stock footage of of a Tower record store
I'm pretty
being
sure
loaded
it's
up.
LA.
You know.
Yeah, I have to get Stanley over here because
Yeah,
he was.
Stanley was
I'm surprised he
set up
wasn't
the
in
store.
this.
Did we?
Where did that come from? Who had it?
This came, Tide. It was a film professor at Sacramento Junior College or Sac City College that did this in 1971, and he taught a course, and
Oh,
so and then when he passed away, his family gave to the center here his whole, and this was in it, and so there's
this is
and
wonderful.
so there's just a limited information about it.
Oh, wait a
It's
minute.
a Dorf. I can't. The name is on the DVD. Dorfman or something like that is the last name.
No, the doors are. Wait a minute. Maybe they do. I have to see it some more. There's something very organic about the stores. They would change,
Uh-huh.
and of course, don't forget this is all LPs. I mean, this is
Right.
a big deal. Later on, Grand Funk too. When the records were 277, that's early on. B16.
So
It makes me suspect it's LA,
uh-huh.
but no, maybe not.
What do you think that people that maybe worked at this store would think now? Because this is pretty rare footage. Just to see
It
something like
really
this.
is.
You know.
Stanley would be the guy who would know it because he was literally there.
So in this store, you had 39 aisles,
Oh, he had more than that. Who knows?
at least 39.
See, because of its length, it looks to me like L.A.
Uh-huh.
or San Diego. No, it's probably L.A. Man, we really piled the merchandise in.
What year did you open LA?
71,
Okay, San Francisco opened before, right?
68, yeah.
So this has to be LA.
Yeah, that's L.A. because that wall back there, it's a metal building and it has cinder block walls. The bottom part.
Well, that's good. That's good to.
So that shows you what we were selling records, 277. That's why we sold so many records. That's one of the things that aggravated me through the years, actually, was the fact that they would, the record companies kept pushing the price up.
Uh-huh.
That they'd get away with it. They did it in sneaky ways too. At Christmas time, they'd have a hot artist, a Bob Dylan or who was that country singer, that Capitol guy that sold 10 million records? Who? Yeah, and they would raise the price of his records $1,
Yeah.
and they'd get away with it. Then the next year, everything else would go up.
Oh.
Then the next year, they'd raise another artist, a hot artist, whoever it was, and
It would have been nice if there
well,
would have
there's
been some.
Janis Joplin.
Yeah. Now, did the L.A. store open right at
Right
around
at the time she died, right down the street. And that was, we got a tremendous amount of publicity in television because what happened was the national TV came down and literally watched people go to the counter and buy that album and stuff it in one of our bags. And
So
I
that's
mean,
kind of
from
a-
that point on, we were a landmark.
We can play this. Have you heard the John Lennon commercial for Tower Records back in 1970?
I had a copy of a tape of one that he did on radio.
Let's play that one for you.
Yeah, that was in, I don't know whether Patty ever heard it or not.
Well, here we go. We'll fire this up. We just
never
we
got
added
that.
some random shots to it, so it has a visual element for you.
Really?
Yeah.
He was a guest, I think, on one of the KZAP or KPMX or KSFM or whatever in San Francisco, I think. That was what we called the San Francisco store. That's Tower. That's L.A. That's San Francisco.
And you find that they're all super discount priced. Tower will always save you money on the LPs and tapes you buy. You'll find more rock LPs than you ever thought existed. And that includes more imported rock LPs. You find more jazz and more
Yeah,
classics, more easy listening.
my friends at the record company sued me for having imported LPs.
Everything that you've ever seen in one store at one time. It sounds like heaven. And you'll find thousands of 45 RPM singles. In short, the largest record store in the known universe lives up to its name. Shop Tower Records in the heart of Sunset Strip tonight and every night of the year until midnight. It is a good place. And Tower will have my latest album this afternoon, so go get it.
What do you think of that?
That go get it. I never heard him do that. I didn't hear that spot. We used to, in the very beginning, when we used radio a lot, and our early radio spots, at the end of every spot, it was the disc jockey, if we could gin him up properly, would say, "Go get him," you know.
But no, we found when we heard this, so when this collection gets taken out, people are going to be able to experience this thing.
That's
It's a
pretty
rare
good.
commercial.
That's pretty good. That is rare. I think what's happened is that, I wonder who talked him into it. I mean, I have any idea. I wasn't there. That picture took place in the Broadway store.
Yeah, we kind
We
of just had
got
that,
that
trying to
boat
find a
in there.
hodgepodge. But yeah, that's it's.
God,
So-
those are great pictures.
What's the L.A. store? You said the San Francisco store is going to be a Walgreens. What's the L.A. store right now? Any
I don't
idea?
think anything yet. It's a clothing store of some sort. This idiot in Chicago bought the building during the bankruptcy for $12 million.
Mhm.
And he hasn't been able to do a damn thing with it. So it's got somebody paying rent as a clothing store.
Ty, you got any questions? Anybody? Steve, anything?
I'm delighted to see these films. I hadn't seen them. And you, Patty? Good.
Well, if you haven't seen them and you haven't seen them, imagine what fans and family of Tower Records will think when they get to see this stuff.
Yeah, I hope so. That picture you have there of me, I think, and Mariah Carey
Yeah.
was really at a cocktail party,
Mm-hmm.
but it was in San Francisco, and it was up in the Pacific Stock Exchange where they have that Diego Rivera mural up there, up on the top floor of the Pacific Stock Exchange.
Okay, you guys gotta do your next
Is that
thing.
what you got? You got something? You got what you want?
We got it.